Welcome to America Reads Fun Learning Activities. We are college students who create learning activities for kids. Our fun activities are focused on reading, writing, and math. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mackenzie, and in today's video, we are going to be learning about how to identify and cite textual evidence to support your inferences and analyses of a text. Textual evidence is information from a text that we can use to support our own ideas, inferences, and arguments regarding that text. It is important that you cite textual evidence because it strengthens your position regarding a text. Including textual evidence in your writing proves to the reader that you are correct. The first thing we are going to do is look at some evidence-based words and phrases. These words will be useful in your writing when citing textual evidence as they allow your writing to flow more smoothly and they allow the reader to know that you are referencing the text. Please copy down these words in your notes as they will be useful later on. The first phrase we have is for instance. You can use for instance when you cite textual evidence in your writing. You can say, for instance, the author stated. The next evidence-based word we have is because. This is important because you can cite the text and then use because to explain why you are citing the text. Next up, we have for example. You can use this word before you cite textual evidence, especially when you are referring to numbers or statistics. The next phrase we have is the author stated. This is important because it strengthens your writing. The reader will know that you are not saying this, but the author said this, and that is why you are correct. Our next phrase is according to the text. This is the same as the author stated. It allows the reader to know that you have a resource from where you are getting your information, and it is not just your own opinion. Our last phrase is, from the reading, I know that. This again allows the reader to know that you are gathering the information following this statement from a reading. Now we are going to create a graphic organizer that will help us later on to organize our thoughts so that we can pick out the best textual evidence to support our inferences. So let's get to it. The first thing I would like you guys to do is take out a piece of paper or a poster board. Then please title your paper Textual Evidence. Next, we are going to create a table that has 5 columns and 4 rows. After you create your table, you are going to want to tile the top boxes. The first box we have is inference. You're going to gather inferences from the story we're going to read later on. Next, you're going to put evidence. After we read our inference, we are going to find evidence from the text to support that inference. After that, we have quotes. We're going to take quotes directly from the text that support the evidence and the inference. Your next box is justify. After we find the evidence and the quote, we are going to justify why we think those quotes and that evidence supports our inference. Lastly, you're going to have essay statement. This box is going to include a statement that you would include in your writing when citing textual evidence. Now that we have our graphic organizer created, let's get to the story. The story I'm going to be reading to you guys today is called The Elves and the Shoemaker by Reed Works. If you need to pause the video at any time, please do so. You can also fast forward or go backward if you need to hear something again. Please write down notes as I go along to help us later on to fill out the graphic organizer. Alright. There was once a shoemaker who, through no fault of his own, had become so poor that at last he had only leather left for one pair of shoes. At evening, he cut the shoes which he intended to begin upon the morning. And since he had a good conscience, he lay down quietly, said his prayers, and fell asleep. In the morning, when he had prayed, as usual, and was preparing to sit down to work, he found the pair of shoes standing finished on his table. He was amazed and could not understand in the least. He took the shoes in his hand to examine them more closely. They were so neatly sewn that not a stitch was out of place, and were as good as the work of a master hand. Soon after, a purchaser came in, and he was much pleased with the shoes. He paid more than the ordinary price for them, so that the shoemaker was able to buy leather for 2 pairs with the money. He cut them out in the evening, and next day, with fresh courage, was about to go to work. But he had no need to, for when he got up, the shoes were finished, and buyers were not lacking. These gave him so much money that he was able to buy leather for 4 pairs of shoes. Early next morning, he found the 4 pairs finished, and so it went on. What he cut out at evening was finished in the morning, so that he was soon again in comfortable circumstances, and became a well-to-do man. Now it happened one evening, not long before Christmas, when he had cut out shoes as usual, that he had said to his wife, "How would it be if we were to sit up tonight to see who it is that lends us such a helping hand?" The wife agreed, lighted a candle, and they hid themselves in the corner of the room behind the clothes which were hanging there. At midnight came 2 little men without clothes, who sat down at the shoemaker's table, took the cutout work, and began with their tiny fingers to stitch, sew, and hammer so neatly and quickly that the shoemaker could not believe his eyes. They did not stop till everything was quite finished and stood complete on the table. They then ran swiftly away. The next day the wife said, "The little man has made us rich, and we ought to show our gratitude. They run about with nothing on, and must freeze with cold. Now we will make them little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and hose, and will even knit them stout stockings, and you shall make them each a pair of shoes." The husband agreed, and at evening, when they had everything ready, they lay out the presents on the table, and hid themselves to see how the little men would behave. At midnight they came skipping in, and were about to set to work, but instead of the leather ready cut out, they found the charming little clothes. At first they were surprised, then excessively delighted. With the greatest speed they put on and smoothed down the pretty clothes, singing, "Now we're dressed so fine and neat, why cobble for others' feet?" Then they hopped and danced about, and leaped over chairs and tables and out at the door. Henceforward they came back no more. But the shoemaker fared well as long as he lived, and had good luck in all his undertakings. And that's the end. Now that we have read our story, we are going to fill out our graphic organizer. I will first reveal an inference about the story, and then together we are going to find evidence and quotes from the text that support the inference. So let's go ahead and get to that. Our first inference that I have prepared today is the shoemaker and his wife are grateful people. Thinking of the story, can you recall any evidence or instances in the story that would make you think that the shoemaker and his wife were grateful people? If so, please write them down in the evidence box. I have put in the evidence box, as a thank you, they, meaning the shoemaker and his wife, created clothes for the elves. Can you guys explain why this is evidence for the inference? Because they were saying thank you, which means they are grateful. The quotes we have to support this are, "The little men have made us rich, and we ought to show our gratitude." This quote is a perfect example as they use the word gratitude. Gratitude is another word for thankful, and thankful can also be used as a synonym for grateful. This is why this is a perfect quote for this inference. Now we are going to justify our inference. I I put in a justify box, we see they are grateful through the clothing gift and the word gratitude. If you guys have any other justifications, please include them in this box. Now we are going to work on our essay statement. Using the quote from the text and our inference, can you guys come up with a statement that you would use in your writing? Let's reveal mine. I put, from the reading, remember our evidence-based phrase? I know they are grateful to the elves because of their, quote, gratitude. All right, now we're going to work backwards. I'm going to reveal a quote, and I want you guys to take an inference from the quote. Once I show you the quote, go ahead and write your inference, what you conclude from the quote, in the inference box. The quote I have for you is, henceforward they came back no more, but the shoemaker fared well as long as he lived, ... From this quote, what do you guys gather? The inference I have taken from this quote is, the shoemaker was well off for the rest of his life and didn't struggle for money. What evidence do I have to support this inference, along with this quote? Can you guys guess? Well, what I have included is, the shoemaker and his wife became rich from the elves' help. We remember the wife saying, the little man have made us rich. And then, using that and this quote, saying the shoemaker fared well as long as he lived, we know that the shoemaker did not struggle for money for the rest of his life as he fared well. Let's go ahead and reel our justification. I put, at the beginning of the story, the shoemaker had only enough money for one pair of shoes. However, at the end of the story, it tells us that he was, quote, well off. Now, using all of this evidence, I want you guys to go ahead and create an essay statement. This is a statement that you would include in your writing that introduces your belief and your evidence and quote to back it up. Now that you guys have done that, let's go ahead and see what I put. All right, I have, we know that the shoemaker remained rich from the quote, from the text, the shoemaker fared well as long as he lived. Alrighty, I'm now going to reveal another inference, and I want you guys to find some evidence and the quote to back the inference up. The elves stopped working after they received the clothes because they had been repaid. Why do you guys think the elves stopped working? If you think it's something different, please include that inference and find evidence and a quote for that inference that you came up with. The evidence I came up for my inference was, the elves only stopped working after they received the clothes. I believe the elves stopped working because they received the clothes, which was a repayment of their hard work. The quote I used to support this is, now we are dressed so fine and neat. Why coddle for others' feet? Now we're going to reveal my justification that will show why I think this quote is proof for my inference that they only stopped working because they received clothing as a repayment. I said, the elves came every day and made shoes until they received the clothes. They sang, why cobble more? Which basically means, why keep working now that they have clothes? Why would they work when they already have clothing? Now I want you guys to come up with your own essay statement that uses the quote and the evidence to support the inference that the elves stopped working because they received clothing as a gift. Or if you came up with your own inference, write an essay statement using the evidence and the quote you found from the story. The essay statement I chose was, the elves stopped working because they received clothes and no longer needed to cobble for others' feet, now that they are dressed so fine and neat. Now that we have finished our graphic organizer, I hope you guys are more confident in including textual evidence in your writing. Thank you for learning with us today. I hope you come back and learn some more. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and we will be back with more videos. Goodbye!